Hello and welcome to this episode of Zelda Mailbag. Zelda Mailbag, brought to you by Game Over Jesse. You know, Zelda and stuff. So in this episode of Zelda Mailbag, I got a couple questions here I would love to answer. So the first one here sent to us by So Not a Hero. And he says this: what are some games that are like Zelda? What are some Zelda-like games? You know, so I'm saying, okay, so you play the Zelda games, there's a lot of them. You played them from start to finish, from beginning to end, and now it's like, well, I like this style of adventure gaming. I like this kind of not quite action RPG, but sort of action RPG, you know, solving puzzles. And what are some more games I can play to sort of quench my thirst until Zelda Wii U comes out? Well, thank you for asking. Now, the thing about this question is actually kind of hard to answer because there's a lot of Zelda games and they're all very different. You got Zelda 1, Zelda 2, Link to the Past, and then of course you got the 3D Zelda games and they're very different themselves. You say games that are like Zelda, but what does that mean? Like what Zelda are you talking about? So I compiled a list of a whole bunch of games spanning every main Zelda game. So hopefully, you know, you find one or two that you like. Here's my list of some of the best Zelda clones or Zelda likes or Zelda-esque games. So take a look. First up is The Legend of Zelda 1, the game that started it all. If you like this game, you'll probably like Chrysalis. Chrysalis came out in 1990, made by SNK, you know, back when they made actual games. FYI, the Japanese name is infinitely cooler, which is Godslayer. Now, for all intents and purposes, Chrysalis is basically the love child between Legend of Zelda and Ys. I mean, it has the top-down dungeon, puzzle solving, all that stuff of Legend of Zelda. And it also has the, you know, experience point growth system, typical RPG facets that you would find in Ys and other action RPGs. But the thing that really separates this game from Legend of Zelda is the story. I'm gonna pull the plot from Wikipedia here. It says this: Chrysalis takes place in a post-apocalyptic world, 100 years after a global thermonuclear war has reverted civilization to a primitive medieval existence, populated with fierce, mutated creatures. Science and advanced technology have been abandoned, though the old ways of magic have survived. The survivors of the terrible destruction built a floating tower to prevent any future cataclysms, as its occupants would have the power to govern the world due to the tower's weapon systems. I mean, come on, if that doesn't get you excited, nothing will. 3D Dot Game Heroes is a love letter, an homage, a parody, however you want to call it. It's literally The Legend of Zelda, to the T. You can even make your character look like Link. I mean, come on. This game came in 2010, published by Atlas, developed by From Software. And there's really not much to say about it. I mean, it is The Legend of Zelda. It plays exactly like Legend of Zelda, except it has a whole lot of other bells and whistles, and you know, you can customize your sprite, you can customize your swords, you can upgrade your equipment and all this stuff. It's really just Legend of Zelda. And along with its, you know, sort of homage status, I mean, this game has a lot of callbacks to old NES games. The English is there, the goofy story, the goofy characters, and of course, the unforgiving difficulty you'd expect from Software. This game is real tough, so strap yourself in. And last up, we have a game that probably no one's ever heard of, but you know, it's actually pretty good, which is Golden Axe Warrior. Golden Axe Warrior came out on the Sega Master System in 1991. It's basically the love child between Golden Axe, you know, that old classic, and The Legend of Zelda. And it also has like the most generic name I've ever heard in my life: Golden Axe Warrior, followed by Big Sword Guy. This game has a story, it's pretty generic, there's nothing real special going on. It has a big overworld, it has over 200 unique screens and lots of enemies. You have to collect 9 crystals that are hidden in 9 dungeons, and then of course at the end you have to go and fight the big bad guy named Death Adder. Weapons and armor can be upgraded, you can learn magic and all this stuff. It's really, it's pretty good. It's a pretty good homage to Legend of Zelda. I mean, it looks great, it plays great, like it doesn't really do anything special, but it doesn't do anything poorly either. Now, this game is considered to be one of the rarest games on the Sega Master System, so chances are you're not gonna find it there. However, this game can be unlocked on the Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection for the PS3 and Xbox 360. So, if you wanna check it out, you know where to find it. Now, moving on to Zelda II, The Adventures of Link. As everybody knows, this game is a big departure for the Zelda series, and it's never quite gone back to this. Now, you know, this game I think is underappreciated. There's a lot of good in this game. There's a lot of bad in this game, but there's a lot to love. Now, if you liked Zelda 2, you'll love the Battle of Olympus. The Battle of Olympus came out just a little bit after Legend of Zelda 2 in 1988. It is officially titled a side-scrolling historical action-adventure video game, which is a real mouthful. But pretty much everything about this game, as you can see from the footage here, is exactly like Zelda 2. The way you can move back and forth, kind of that, you know, 2D open world style game. The way you level up, the way enemies drop experience points, the way you get items, the way you use items, the way you upgrade yourself, everything is Zelda 2, to the T, except it's set in ancient Greece. So if you're into that type of thing, then here you go. Now, the bad news is that this game is not available on any virtual console or anything that is quote-unquote legitimate. So if you want to track down the original copy, be my guest. Now, last up here for Zelda 2 is, of course, Castlevania 2. Now, this game is well known and well loved by a lot of people, so there's not much new I can say about it. This game originally came out in 1987 by Konami, you know, back when they made games. Remember those days? Anybody? Hello? And it is essentially the Zelda 2 of the Castlevania series. I mean, it's fully 2D open world. You kill enemies, you get experience points, you get hearts, you can spend money, you can upgrade your items, you can upgrade things and buy equipment. Like, it's really just, it's an action RPG. For all intents and purposes, this game is what you would call a Metroidvania, which is kind of a weird term, but whatever. And yeah, I mean, it's a great game. Everyone should play it. Now, the great news about this game is that it is available on the Virtual Console. So check it out, fire it up, have a good time. Moving on to the game that some people might consider the best game ever made, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Now, there's not much to say about this game. It is a fantastic game, one of the best games ever made. It defined a genre, it defined a generation. You and I, we've played through this game many, many times, so what are some games that are just like it? Well, let me tell you. First up is Neutopia 2. Now, Neutopia 2 is a game that came out for the PC Engine and TurboGrafx 16 in 1991 and 1992, respectively. Now, you may or may not have figured this out, but this game is a sequel to Neutopia 1. Now, Neutopia 1 is a real piece of garbage that no one should ever play. But Neutopia 2 took everything bad about Neutopia 1, which is everything, and made it better. This game is, you can see right now from the footage, this game is The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, like beat for beat. It is 100% that game. And that's not a bad thing, you know? Now, of course, this game came out, like I said, on PC Engine and TurboGrafx 16, which means you're gonna have a real tough time picking it up, you know, physically. However, the good news, sort of, is that this game is available on the Wii Virtual Console. Now, it's also available on the Wii U and the PlayStation Network, but that appears to be only in Japan. So if you're in Europe or if you're in North America and you want to play this game, you got to dig out an old Wii or take your Wii U and download it there if you can figure out how. Next up, we have Crusader of Senti, which is a game that came out for the Genesis/Mega Drive, if you're one of those people, in 1994. Now, interesting note, this game actually came out the same day in Japan and North America, which is pretty rare back in the day. Heck, that's pretty rare even now. So, as you can see from the footage, this game is, I mean, again, beat for beat. I mean, the way it looks, the way it plays, the way dungeons are done, everything is really just a Zelda clone. So how does this game compare to Link to the Past? Well, GamePro magazine said, while Zelda has tons of hidden surprises, weapons, and fearsome bosses, Crusader of Senti has a too familiar storyline, minor enemies, and a serious shortage of puzzles. But the game looks great, it plays great, and if you just want to scratch that Zelda itch while we wait for Zelda NX, you could do a lot worse than Crusader of Senti. Now, the bad news is that this game has never been re-released on Virtual Consoles, so you're just gonna have to lace up those boots and hike around some Goodwills. Now, moving on to the 3D Zelda games. Between you and me, the 3D Zelda games are all pretty similar. I mean, sure, you know, comparing Ocarina of Time to like Twilight Princess, you know, there's a lot of differences. Twilight Princess, you know, runs a lot better, a lot less clunky and all that. But really, fundamentally speaking, the 3D Zelda games are all pretty similar. So I'm just going to group them all together. And if you want to scratch that itch for a good old 3D Zelda game, here's a couple games you might want to check out. First up, we have the Darksiders series. Darksiders 1 came out in 2010 for PS3, Xbox 360, and of course, for PC. Now, this game was more of a hack and slash rather than puzzle and adventure and exploration like Zelda is, but it's very much in that 3D Zelda style. You have a big map, quests, you have side quests. It's a sort of non-linear, kind of somewhat open world in the way that Zelda's open world. There's dungeons and puzzles and everything is there. Darksiders 2 came out in 2012, but was recently re-released on the PS4, Xbox One, and of course on PC. So you should have no trouble tracking these games down. Next up, we have Okami. Originally, Okami came out on the PS2 way back in 2006 and was recently ported to the PS3 in 2012. This game comes to us from the now defunct Clover Studio and was published by Capcom. One thing that may grab you, of course, is the art style. It's made to look like an old Japanese ink style painting, and of course, it kind of invokes the vibe of, you know, Wind Waker a little bit. So if you're a fan of Zelda, and certainly if you're a fan of Wind Waker, this is the game for you. It's certainly action-adventure, but it focuses much more on puzzles. It focuses more on exploration and side quests and things like this. If Darksiders is maybe a little too action-oriented for you and you want to do more, you know, puzzle solving and world exploration, Okami is the way to go. Now, this game is fantastic. The music is great. It looks gorgeous. There's no reason why anyone should not play this game. And finally, we have Oceanhorn, Monster of Uncharted Seas. Now, this game, as you can see here from the footage, is blatantly, not even just unabashedly ripping off Wind Waker. But you know what? If you're gonna rip off a game, you might as well choose one of the best. This game originally came out on iOS back in 2013. And as such, the game still has kind of that, mobile game control scheme, mobile game sort of way things are done. And so when it was ported over to Windows back in 2015, some of the controls didn't quite work that well. But aside from that, this game is completely the Wind Waker. I mean, you've got dungeons to explore, monsters to fight with different weapons, you throw pots, you cut bushes to get hidden coins and hearts. I mean, it's so Zelda. I don't know how they haven't gotten sued yet. And on top of that, if you need another reason to pick up this game, Nobu Uematsu, the original composer for the Final Fantasy series, composed a few songs for this game. So if you're a fan of Zelda, if you're a fan of Japanese games, if you're a fan of that old school style, just lighthearted, great adventure, Oceanhorn is the way to go. It currently has an 85% on Metacritic, and so you know you're in for a good time. The second question comes to us from Nimantor. If you could make a new Zelda item, what would that item be? Now, I thought about this a lot. And by a lot, I mean like maybe for like 10 minutes. Here's the thing, Zelda items, a lot of them have combat functions and then they also have puzzle functions. And so it's like, the item can't just be like an attack. It can't just be a puzzle thing. It needs to be something to really kind of change the way the game is. Because the truth is over the years, the Legend of Zelda games have gotten a lot more items and they all are important and they're all so unique and they kind of cover like every main area that they need to cover is covered. Like I've never really played a Zelda game and I was like, oh, I wish I had this. If I had something like this, the game would be so much easier because the game is perfectly tuned to match the items. But if there is something I would add to the Zelda universe, and this is something that everyone's gonna hate me for, but so Zelda games don't really have jumping. Or if they do, it's kind of in a context sensitive or it's kind of in a sort of basic situation. But my thought was this, what if there's an item that let you double jump?
Double jump.
Hold on, put your pitchforks down, everybody. Just like double jumping in like Metroidvania games like Castlevania Symphony of the Night, I mean, your vertical range is doubled, or at least 1.5. In the Zelda universe, if there was a way to jump, first of all, that would be good. But if you could also jump and there was like a way of double jumping, maybe, little wings come out, something like that, but that lets you jump again, maybe double the height or 1.5 multiply, whatever it is. It would completely expand and it would, double or at least increase in some way the vertical range of all the levels. So like, you have these dungeons and now it's like, okay, you have all these things like a hook shot and a boomerang, whatever. And now there's ledges that, you can't get to until you get the double jump. Now in a dungeon, obviously this would need to be context sensitive based on when you get the item versus when the dungeon occurs. The thing about Zelda games, right? Zelda worlds usually have two levels. They have like an underground level, like when you fall down holes, you go in caves, things like that. And then they have like the main world level. If you could have that mixed with verticality, in games like Wind Waker, for example, you have that little leaf thing that lets you kind of fly down. And that is also really good. I mean, that's kind of what I'm talking about, like more vertical stuff. Like there's not a whole lot to do vertically, I mean, you can climb walls and you can kind of float on air, but again, floating on air means you go up and then you go down. I'm talking about going from down, going up. Now again, this would change the way that levels and the world and secrets and everything are arranged, but I think adding this one thing itself could really change Zelda. Now, some people might say like, oh, some of the charm of Zelda is that there is no jumping, and I'm not disagreeing with you. But I think if there was an item that would really change up the game and make it really unique and it would turn it into something that we haven't played before, a double jump of some way in Zelda, I think would be fantastic. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like my voice and the cut of my jib, feel free to head over to my channel and check it out. If you like what you see, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.